Hi, friends. It's your pal Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about the return of misogyny in Dungeons and Dragons. Um, it, Not by Dungeons and Dragons. The return of misogyny from the D&D community toward women designers and women in leadership of Dungeons and Dragons. So Lorraine Williams, I am on record. I've talked about Lorraine Williams in depth. Just search my name and Dungeons and Dragons Lorraine Williams. You'll see 50 videos, right? And my issue is Lorraine was a really special lady. She built incredible value um, into Dungeons and Dragons. She created settings that are irreplaceable and absolutely, full on beloved D&D canon. She's 100% responsible for Dark Sun, which is one of the most beloved settings ever, the one that's called for the most to return for 5e. And there's a lot of, and there's renewed hopes that it'll be brought into 5e because of the new Scion subclass. But in the 70s and 80s, a lot of people actually Dungeons and Dragons reporters, people who report on Dungeons and Dragons, there was a huge amount of misogyny, and that carried all the way through the 90s, and actually carries through to this day. I believe that Ben Riggs is part of a long line of middle-aged white guys who come out and are just furious that there was a D&D queen, a CEO of Dungeons and Dragons from 1986 to 1997. They're furious about it, right? And they do a ton of things to just say she was a garbage, she was garbage at business, garbage at design. Nothing good that happened was her responsibility. It's terrible. It's outrageously misogynistic, in my opinion. And I think we just saw a huge instance specifically of outrageous, completely unfair, horribly unwarranted misogyny brought forward by the character sheet on comicbook.com. So they just did a video, and in that video they talked about a design deficit and a design and a leadership deficit in Dungeons and Dragons creative and game space, right? So Christopher Perkins and Jeremy Crawford have left. And so charactersheet.com is like, D&D's, they're in a lot of trouble because they just don't have it. There's no leadership there. There's no good design there. It's just a huge void that could never be filled. Well, in order to believe what they're saying, you have to be outrageously ignorant of what's actually happening at Hasbro. And they're not ignorant. They're just misogynistic, in my opinion. In order to believe what they're saying, you'd have to not understand that Amanda Heyman, who has led multiple books at this point, been a lead designer on multiple books, is right there. That Mackenzie DeArmas, who has accomplished things in Dungeons and Dragons that other men designers have not accomplished, is right there, right? They're right there. There's absolutely no deficiency in design in the design team. There's absolutely no deficiency in leadership. There are sound leaders and sound designers there. So to say that D&D is in trouble, you have to say that the women designing and leading the Dungeons & Dragons design team right now suck. And that is just not true. It is outrageous, ridiculous, unwarranted misogyny, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Absolutely nothing more, absolutely nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider like and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.